Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Demoralized West Wing stokes fears over Trump's capacity to handle a crisis. Chaos here, backlash there, shock everywhere. And in Washington and around the globe another gasping chorus of WTF commentary, reckless, not normal, reality show run amok. And so on, etc., for the 100th and can't remember time of the Trump era. But there is something different about this week's spasm of sudden policy lurches, graceless personal insults, oozing scandal news, and ceaseless West Wing knife fights. It is the starkest example to date of President Donald Trump's executive style looking untenable not merely from the outside, from the perspective of establishment politicians and media analysts, but from the inside, too. Administration officials and outsiders with windows into decision-making describe a growing sense of despair within Trump's ranks, driven by the mounting realization that the president's brand of politics guided by intuition and improvisation is incompatible with a competently functioning executive branch. Most alarming, by these lights, is mounting evidence that Trump lacks an attribute possessed by most previous presidents and certainly by all the most successful ones, a capacity for self-critique and self-correction. Most of this week's White House furors, the president's zigzag comments on gun control, an announcement on steel tariffs that caught his own economic team by surprise and sent the Dow plunging, his ongoing battle with his attorney general, and reports that foreign governments were scheming to exploit the inexperience and financial vulnerabilities of son-in-law Jared Kushner, were generated from within. That's left many in Washington and beyond wondering what happens in the inevitable moments. Every modern president has faced them, when outside events take over, and the government has to deal with a major military confrontation, a major natural disaster or some other catastrophe. Nobody has any idea whether he has any sense of what it means to deal with a crisis, said Leon Panetta, President Bill Clinton's former chief of staff and the former head of the CIA and Secretary of Defense under President Barack Obama. It creates a really uncomfortable feeling because we really don't know if we're going to be able to confront a crisis and do it successfully. If such a thing happened today, Trump would face crisis with deep demoralization and discord within his ranks, backed by advisors who consider him erratic, a national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, an economic advisor, Gary Cohn, who are both rumored to be eyeing the exits or being pushed that way by others, and a White House chief of staff in John Kelly, whose relationship with Trump is being frayed to near the breaking point. All three of these men were once described as steadying forces for a president who likes to wing it on instinct. But all three are described by administration officials as wondering whether Trump is impervious to discipline. The feeling right now is very similar to the way it was at the very beginning of the administration, a former Trump official said, describing the period when then Chief of Staff Reince Priebus took a backseat to former strategist Steve Bannon, who pushed divisive policies and left Priebus flailing, without any way to control Trump or corral his team. But Kelly, once hailed as a tough-minded rule-maker, is not proving to be more effective at channeling the power of the executive in any more productive way. Rather than changing course, Trump was described by an administration official Friday, echoing other reports, as sullen and isolated, frustrated that he is not being given credit he thinks he deserves and deeply suspicious of the people around him. Increasingly, that suspicion is justified, as people close to Trump second-guess his judgment and his capacity to do his job. But it is also suspicion that Trump invited by undermining the very people who he asked to come help him get better at governing. Most presidents know when to recalibrate, to redirect, to hit a reset button on their policies or their own leadership style, said Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who served at senior levels of both the Clinton and Obama White Houses. So in the face of incompetence and total chaos you have a president who has no self-awareness of how bad it is. Panetta urged Kelly to organize a come-to-Jesus moment in which Trump's trusted advisors along with Republican congressional leaders and business executives warn the president in the strongest terms that he's veering off course. "I think people have to come down hard on him," he said. "I understand he likes to manage and govern by chaos, but that instability is undermining his presidency." Trump loyalists note that he is a personality who became president by his willingness to defy conventional notions of how candidates behave. And the sheer volume of precedent-shattering words and actions from Trump has undeniably created a dynamic in his favor. Events and scandals that would have been months-long uproars in earlier times seem to get lost in the smoke under Trump. In the early months of Clinton's presidency, Time magazine published a cover capturing the consensus Washington view of his stumbling start, "The incredible shrinking president." His miscalculations and self-inflicted wounds, as writer Michael Duffy described them, included firing the White House travel office, getting a haircut on Air Force One that may, or may not, as subsequent inquiries suggested, have snarled commercial traffic, and a generally sloppy and discursive style of White House decision-making. It is hard to imagine any of those even moving the needle for more than an hour or two in the Trump era. Clinton was probably the recent president most Trump-like in some respects, an outsized personality, prone to outbursts of temper when he felt he wasn't getting credit, and someone by temperament who found the traditional constraints of the presidency as inordinately confining. Like Trump, in the early days there were warring factions around Clinton. One important difference, however, was Clinton's gift for recalibration. After Democrats got throttled in midterm elections in 1994, he consulted everyone from political philosophers to self-help and firewalking guru Tony Robbins. Though Clinton's personal indiscipline led to sexual scandal, he always prevailed through setbacks with a high degree of political discipline. The fear that Trump, who at age 71 is a quarter-century older than Clinton was when he came to office, lacks the ability to reinvent himself or redirect his presidency is why many on his own team have come in many respects to join the doubters. Trump to launch major donor initiative after disastrous week. Donald Trump is wrapping up the most chaotic week of his presidency by rolling out a major new donor push, one of his most serious steps yet to prepare for a 2020 re-election campaign. Trump will appear before big GOP givers at his Mar-a-Lago resort on Saturday for the launch of a fundraising initiative that mimics the famed George W. Bush Pioneer Program, according to 3 senior Republicans familiar with the plans. As with Bush, the president will reward donors who've bundled thousands of dollars in contributions, giving them an entree to exclusive dinners, political briefings, and future retreats. Under the plan, which is intended to provide a fundraising infrastructure that was lacking from Trump's 2016 campaign, donors who raise $25,000 will join the Trump train and those who bundle $45,000 will be part of the 45 Club. The program, which will jointly benefit Trump's campaign and the Republican National Committee, will introduce higher class levels for larger dollar amounts in the future. Funds raised will also go toward the party's 2018 efforts. The fundraiser, one of several big donor events Trump will host this weekend at Mar-a-Lago, shows how Trump is slowly building a 2020 campaign apparatus even as he endures the most tumultuous stretch of his presidency. While top advisors bolt the White House and a special counsel zeroes in on the president's ties to Russia, Trump is tapping a new campaign manager, taking steps to fend off would-be primary challengers, and lining up travel to critical 2020 states. He has told friends privately that he wants to raise a massive amount of money in the months to come. Plans for the bundling program have been in the works for weeks. Just because the Democrats and many in the media refuse to get over 2016 doesn't mean President Trump should take his focus off 2020, said Jason Miller, a former senior Trump campaign aide who remains in touch with the president. It's important that President Trump continue to lay the groundwork for a strong re-election campaign because he's not going to be able to drain the swamp overnight. Trump took a major step toward the next election this week when he named Brad Parscale, his 2016 digital director, as his campaign manager. Since 2016, Parscale has taken the lead in overseeing the president's outside political operation and frequently visited the White House and Trump's getaway residences to offer him electoral advice. The 42-year-old Parscale, who recently moved from San Antonio to South Florida to be closer to the president and his inner circle, has been particularly focused on bolstering Trump's network of online supporters. Trump's financial backers will hear from Parscale this weekend at a Republican National Committee donor retreat at the Four Seasons Resort in Palm Beach, Florida. The event is expected to draw a number of big donors, including sugar baron Jose Van Jewel, venture capitalist Elliot Berwoody, and lobbyist Brian Ballard. Parscale is particularly close with Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and within the administration his appointment was widely perceived as an effort on the part of Kushner, who is under increasing scrutiny over his financial entanglements, to leave his imprint on the developing re-election campaign. Two White House aides and two others close to the president said they interpreted it as an effort to block former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, who feuded with Kushner during the 2016 campaign but who remains close with the president, from getting the top 2020 post. During a Wednesday morning White House staff meeting, Kushner addressed the hire and outlined Parscale's background, said one person present. At a time when his approval rating has plummeted to the low 40s, Trump is taking steps to ward off would-be primary challengers. Last month, his campaign committee printed glossy, 10-page pamphlets outlining Trump's accomplishments during his first year in office and delivered them to local GOP meetings in Iowa, home of the first-in-the-nation caucuses. The slickly produced pamphlets, which included topics like protecting life, ending job-killing regulations, and making government accountable, were designed to reach the Republican activists who are most involved in party affairs and likely to participate in the caucuses 2 years from now. The pamphlets help keep Trump in the game, so to speak, until the 2020 campaign begins in earnest, said Karen Fessler, an influential conservative activist in the state. Pointing out 2 years ahead of time what the president and his team have accomplished makes sure that caucus voters know that. The White House has been monitoring potential Republican challengers, including 3 outspoken Trump detractors, Ohio Governor John Kasich, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, and Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. Sasse blasted Trump repeatedly the past week over trade and guns. And Flake sparked a flurry of speculation about his political intentions when he announced a March 16 speech in New Hampshire. To some, the Parscale announcement was designed to send a loud message to would-be Republican opponents. He just signaled to the GOP he is running and that should deter primary challenges, said former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, an informal Trump advisor. Trump is also using his official office to prepare for his next campaign, focusing much of his travel to states that will play an outsized role in determining the outcome of the next presidential election. Since the inauguration, for instance, Trump has visited Pennsylvania a handful of times. He is slated to return to the state the next week. The state is so important to the president's team that last month they quietly dispatched White House Deputy Chief of Staff Rick Dearborn to Harrisburg to keynote a Pennsylvania GOP dinner. White House Political Director Bill Stepien is among those overseeing the travel. He keeps about 20 maps appended to the walls of his perch in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Last month, when Trump's team was looking to stage an event focused on selling the recently passed tax reform bill, they chose the all-important electoral state of Ohio. Stepien's office has also helped place roughly 300 former Trump campaign staffers into jobs throughout the administration. By keeping the staffers re-engaged after the 2016 race, administration officials hope they'll be easily able to transition to a re-election campaign. In a brief interview, Stepien, himself a former top Trump campaign staffer, said that as Trump's most urgent priority is following through on the promises he made in the last campaign, not the next one. It's clear that by successfully working to pass his agenda there are tremendous results in political value, he said.